There are places in this world that feel ancient. They hold a darkness that time just, well, cannot erase. The Green Mountains of southwestern Vermont are one such place. Here, deep within a vast wilderness of tangled trees and rolling fog, lies an area known to locals and paranormal investigators as the Bennington Triangle. It is a place of profound, unsettling beauty, where the silence is so heavy it feels like a presence. The trees stand like silent sentinels, their branches twisted into strange skeletal shapes, and the ground is covered in a thick carpet of moss that seems to swallow every sound. This isn't just a forest. It's a place with a reputation, a dark energy that you can feel clinging to the very air you breathe. We've investigated countless haunted locations, but there's something different about the raw, untamed energy of a place like this. It's not contained within four walls. It's everywhere. The wind that whispers through the pines sounds like it's carrying voices from another time, secrets that the mountain refuses to give up. Locals have spoken of it for generations. They talk about strange lights hovering above the treetops, eerie sounds that echo through the valleys with no discernible source, and a pervasive feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. This is Glastonbury Mountain, the epicenter of the Bennington Triangle, a place where the veil between our world and another feels terrifyingly thin. It's a place where people have walked in and simply never walked out. The term Bennington Triangle was coined by author Joseph A. Citro in the 1990s, but the legends are much older. He drew a line connecting the towns of Bennington, Woodford and Somerset with the hulking mass of Glastonbury Mountain at its dark heart. This entire area was once a thriving logging and mining town, but it was abandoned, left to be reclaimed by the wilderness. The empty foundations and forgotten roads are all that remain, like scars on the landscape. You can almost feel the residual energy of the people who lived and worked here, their hopes and struggles now just echoes in the woods. But there's another, more sinister energy that lingers here, one that predates any modern settlement. This is a place where reality seems to bend. Compasses spin wildly, electronics fail without reason, and the weather can shift in an instant from a calm, sunny day to a violent, disorienting storm. It's as if the mountain itself has a consciousness, a will of its own that can turn against those who trespass on its sacred ground. For a 5-year period from 1945 to 1950, this malevolent energy seemed to awaken. It reached out from the shadows of the forest and claimed at least 5 souls, leaving behind a legacy of fear and a mystery that chills investigators to the bone. They vanished without a trace, swallowed whole by the whispering woods of Glastonbury Mountain. We are going to explore their stories. We are going to seek answers. The first unexplained disappearance occurred on November 12, 1945. The victim was Middy Rivers, a 74-year-old man who knew these woods like the back of his hand. He was an experienced hunter and guide, not some tourist who could easily get lost. He was leading a group of 4 other hunters up the winding trails of Glastonbury Mountain. As the afternoon light began to fade, casting long, distorted shadows across the forest floor, Middy got ahead of his group. He turned a bend in the trail, and that was the last time anyone ever saw him. He was there one moment, and in the next, he was gone. It was as if the forest had simply opened up and swallowed him. His companions called out his name, their voices echoing unanswered through the silent trees. They expected him to emerge from the brush at any moment, perhaps with a wry smile, but the only response was the rustle of leaves in the cold autumn wind. Panic began to set in. They searched the immediate area, their flashlights cutting feeble beams through the encroaching darkness. There were no signs of a struggle, no tracks leading off the path, no indication that anything unusual had happened. Middy Rivers, A man who had spent his entire life navigating this very wilderness had vanished into thin air on a trail he knew intimately. The search for him would soon become a chilling blueprint for the mysteries to come. The official search began immediately. Hundreds of volunteers, local police, and even the US Army joined the effort, combing every inch of the rugged terrain. They scoured the mountainside for days, their hopes dwindling with each passing hour. The only clue they ever found was a single, solitary rifle cartridge in a stream bed. It was the type of ammunition MIDI used, but it told them nothing. Was it dropped that day, or had it been lying there for years? It was a ghost of a clue, a meaningless object that only deepened the mystery. No body, no weapon, no piece of clothing, nothing. It was an impossible vanishing act. MIDI Rivers was a seasoned woodsman. He wasn't the type to fall into a ravine or get disoriented. He knew how to survive in the wild. The fact that a man with his skills could disappear so completely without leaving a single trace behind sent a ripple of fear through the local community. It was the first in a string of events that would cement the Bennington Triangle's dark reputation. People began to whisper old tales, to look at the mountain with a new sense of dread. MIDI Rivers wasn't just lost, he was taken. And this was only the beginning. The mountain was not yet finished. Just over a year later, on December 1st, 1946, the mountain claimed another victim. This time it was 18-year-old Paula Jean Weldon, a sophomore at Bennington College. She was a bright, vibrant young woman, but on that chilly Sunday afternoon, she felt a need to escape. She told her roommate she was going for a long walk and set off toward the famous Long Trail, which cuts right through the heart of the Bennington Triangle. She was dressed in a distinctive red parka, blue jeans and sneakers, clothing hardly suitable for a serious hike in the harsh Vermont winter, suggesting she didn't plan to be gone for long. She was seen by several people along the way, including a gas station attendant and an elderly couple who she asked for directions. The last known sighting of Paula was by a man named Ernie Whitman, who was also walking on the trail. He said he was about 100 yards behind her when she rounded a rocky outcropping on the path. By the time he reached the same spot just moments later, she was gone. The trail ahead was long and straight, with nowhere for her to have hidden or turned off. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist. When she failed to return to her dorm that night, the alarm was raised. What followed was one of the largest and most extensive search operations in Vermont's history. Her disappearance would become one of the most famous unsolved cases in the annals of American crime and strange phenomena. The search for Paula Weldon was massive. Bennington College closed down so students and faculty could help. The FBI was called in, a rare occurrence for a missing person case at the time. Hundreds of searchers, including state police and National Guardsmen, formed human chains and swept through the dense, snow-dusted woods. They brought in bloodhounds, but the dogs would follow her scent for a short distance up the trail, and then stop abruptly, whining and confused, as if her trail had been lifted into the sky. No sign of her was ever found, no red parka, no scrap of clothing, no footprint that led anywhere off the main path. The forest held its secrets tight, offering no clues, no answers, only a cold, indifferent silence. The lack of evidence was maddening. It fueled speculation and a storm of theories. Did she run away to start a new life? Her family insisted she was happy and had no reason to leave. Was she abducted? But there were no signs of a struggle, no witnesses to a vehicle or another person forcing her away. The area where she vanished was remote, accessible only on foot. The mystery deepened, becoming a national sensation. The story of the pretty college girl who walked into the Vermont woods and never came out became a cautionary tale, a ghost story told around campfires. The disappearance of Paula Jean Weldon cemented the growing legend of the Bennington Triangle as a place where the rules of our world do not apply. The disappearances stopped for 3 years, and a tense quiet settled over the region. But the mountain was only waiting. On December 1st, 1949, exactly 3 years to the day after Paula Weldon vanished, the triangle claimed another. This time, the victim wasn't even on the mountain itself. James E. Tedford, a 68-year-old Army veteran, was on a bus, returning home to the Bennington Soldiers' Home from a trip to visit relatives in St. Albans, Vermont. He was a resident of the home, which was located right within the boundaries of the dreaded Triangle. The circumstances of his disappearance are, to this day, among the most baffling and inexplicable events we have ever encountered. Tedford boarded the bus in St. Albans and was seen by 14 other passengers. They testified that he was on the bus, dozing in his seat as it made its way south toward Bennington. The last time anyone definitively saw him, the bus was one stop away from its final destination. When the bus pulled into the Bennington terminal, James Tedford was gone. His seat was empty. All of his belongings, including his luggage in the overhead rack and an open bus timetable on his vacant seat, were still there. It was as if he had been plucked from a moving vehicle, an impossible feat that defies all logical explanation. He had vanished while surrounded by witnesses who saw nothing. The driver and the other passengers were stunned. They had been on a closed, moving vehicle. Tedford couldn't have jumped out a window without someone noticing. The bus had made no unscheduled stops. He was there one moment and the next, he simply wasn't. The police were baffled. How does a man disappear from a moving bus full of people? They investigated every possibility. Could he have gotten off at the previous stop and no one noticed? The driver insisted he would have seen him. Could he have been hiding somewhere on the bus? A thorough search turned up nothing. It was a perfect locked room mystery, but the room was a bus travelling at 50 miles per hour through the heart of the Bennington Triangle. Adding another layer of paranormal dread to the case, it was later discovered that Tedford's wife had also vanished years earlier. She had disappeared from their home in Bennington, and some reports claim that after she left, Tedford was heard saying he would one day figure out where she went. Even stranger, James Tedford was related by blood to Middy Rivers, the first hunter who had disappeared back in 1945. The connections are just too strong to be a coincidence. It feels like a dark energy, a malevolent force tied to this land was targeting a specific bloodline, reaching out to claim those connected to its cursed soil, even pulling a man from a bus moving through the night. Section 5. The Boy Who Became a Ghost, Paul Jepson. The darkness that haunted the Bennington Triangle was not yet satisfied. Less than a year after James Tedford's impossible vanishing act, it would claim its youngest and most heartbreaking victim. In October of 1950, a woman named Mrs. Jepson was working a temporary job as an animal caretaker on a local farm. To make the long drive easier, she brought her 8-year-old son, Paul, with her. On the afternoon of October 12th, she left Paul playing happily near the family's pigsty while she went inside the barn to feed the animals. She was gone for no more than an hour. She could hear him playing, the sounds of a happy child echoing in the crisp autumn air. When she came back outside, the farm was silent. The playful sounds were gone, replaced by an unnerving quiet. Paul was nowhere to be seen. She called his name, her voice filled with rising panic. She searched the area around the pigsty, the barn, and the nearby woods. But her son had vanished. He was wearing a bright red jacket, just like Paula Weldon, which should have made him easy to spot against the greens and browns of the landscape, but there was nothing. Just an empty yard and the chilling silence of the Vermont wilderness. A mother's worst nightmare had become a reality. Her son was gone, erased from the world in the short time she had her back turned. Once again, a massive search was launched. Hundreds of volunteers and law enforcement officers descended on the area. They brought in bloodhounds, hoping the dogs could pick up the boy's scent. This time, the dogs did find a trail. They excitedly followed Paul's scent from the pigsty down the farm's driveway and onto the main road. The trail led them to the exact spot where Paula Weldon had disappeared 4 years earlier. There, at that strange nexus of paranormal energy, the dogs stopped dead. They whined, circled in confusion, and lost the scent completely, just as they had during the search for Paula. It was as if Paul Jepson had walked to that spot and been lifted away by an unseen force. The psychic investigator brought in on the case, Florence Ratajkowski, claimed she had a vision of the boy. She told the distraught parents that Paul was not dead, but was being held by a strange force on a high, lonely place. Despite the strangeness of the bloodhound's behavior and the psychic's vision, the official search continued for weeks, yielding nothing. No body, no clothing, no sign of what happened to the little boy in the red jacket. The disappearance was so traumatic, so inexplicable that Paul's father, racked with grief and frustration, publicly blamed himself. He later told reporters he believed the mountain had a strange curse on it, a sentiment that many in the community were beginning to share. Just 16 days after little Paul Jepson vanished, the Bennington Triangle claimed its fifth and final documented victim. On October 28, 1950, 53-year-old Frida Langer and her cousin Herbert Elsner went for a hike near the Somerset Reservoir. Frida was an experienced hiker and knew the area well. After walking for a while, she slipped and fell into a small stream. Although she wasn't seriously injured, she was soaked and cold. She told her cousin she wanted to go back to their campsite to change her clothes. She said she would be quick and would meet him back on the trail. Herbert waited, but she never returned. He waited for over half an hour, calling her name, his voice swallowed by the dense woods. Growing increasingly worried, he hiked back to the campsite himself, expecting to find her there, perhaps warming herself by the fire. But the campsite was empty. Frida was gone. He searched the area frantically before finally hiking out of the woods to get help. Once again, the alarm was raised, and the now all-too-familiar routine began. State police, volunteers, and even aircraft were dispatched to scour the region around the Somerset Reservoir. For the fifth time in 5 years, a person had walked into the wilderness of the Bennington Triangle and disappeared without a trace. The community was gripped by terror. The search for Frida Langer was one of the most intensive yet. Given the recent string of disappearances, authorities threw everything they had at it. Over 300 searchers, including soldiers from the National Guard and pilots from the Civil Air Patrol, combed the rugged terrain for weeks. They searched on foot, on horseback, and from the air. The weather was harsh, with snow and freezing rain hampering their efforts, but they pressed on, determined not to let the mountain claim another soul without a fight. Yet just like with the others, they found nothing. No footprints, no discarded wet clothing, no sign of a struggle. It was another perfect disappearance. But this case would have a different, even more disturbing ending. 7 months later, on May 12, 1951, Frida Langer's body was discovered. It was found near the Somerset Reservoir, in an area that had been searched extensively and repeatedly by hundreds of people the previous fall. Her body was lying out in the open, in a clearing that would have been impossible to miss. The state of decomposition was so advanced that a cause of death could not be determined. The mystery was, how could her body suddenly appear in a place that had been so thoroughly searched? It was as if she had been taken somewhere else and then returned months later. This final grim discovery only deepened the enigma of the Bennington Triangle. The search efforts for each of the Bennington victims were monumental undertakings, marked by a desperate sense of urgency and a growing feeling of dread. Imagine hundreds of men, their faces grim and determined, forming long lines to sweep through the dense, unforgiving underbrush. Their flashlights would cut through the deep shadows of the forest at night, creating a frantic, dancing light show against the ancient trees. You can almost hear the crackle of their radios, the shouts of team leaders trying to coordinate the search, and the constant hopeful calling of the missing person's name, a sound that would echo and then die in the oppressive silence of the woods. These searchers were not amateurs. They were seasoned trackers, hunters and law enforcement officers who knew how to read the signs of the forest. Yet, the wilderness of Glastonbury Mountain offered them nothing. In the case of Midi Rivers, they followed his tracks to a certain point on the trail, and then they just stopped. There were no other tracks leading away, no signs of a scuffle, no indication that he had even hesitated. It was the same for Paula Weldon. Her trail simply ended. For little Paul Jeffson, the bloodhounds led searchers to a specific spot on a road and then lost the scent entirely, as if he had been lifted vertically into the air. These were not just dead ends, they were physical impossibilities. The abandoned campsites and personal belongings left behind paint an even eerier picture. James Tedford's luggage sat on the bus rack above his empty seat, a silent testament to his impossible departure. It suggests that whatever happened was sudden, unexpected, and not of his own volition. People don't just decide to leave all their possessions behind and step out of a moving bus into nothingness. The scene speaks of an instantaneous removal, a snatching away that is beyond our normal comprehension. The rifle cartridge found during the search for Midi Rivers was another ghost clue, a tantalizing but ultimately meaningless piece of the puzzle that led nowhere. The complete lack of physical evidence is the most defining and terrifying aspect of these cases. In 5 disappearances, searchers found no bodies, with the exception of Frida Langer's, which appeared under bizarre circumstances, no torn clothing, no discarded bags, and no signs of an animal attack or a struggle with another human. It is this absolute void of information that makes the Bennington Triangle so unnerving. Nature is messy, violence is messy, people getting lost is messy. There are always clues left behind, but here, in this strange corner of Vermont, it was as if these 5 individuals were carefully and cleanly erased from existence, leaving behind only a chilling void and footprints that lead to nowhere. When logic fails, the human mind turns to other explanations, and the Bennington Triangle offers a breeding ground for theories ranging from the mundane to the deeply paranormal. The most straightforward explanation is that these individuals were victims of a hidden serial killer who knew the woods intimately. This person could have stalked and abducted them, disposing of their bodies in one of the area's many abandoned wells or mine shafts. However, this theory struggles to explain the sheer lack of evidence. A serial killer would almost certainly leave behind some sign of a struggle, some trace evidence, and it certainly doesn't explain how James Tedford was taken from a moving bus. Another rational theory points to the extreme and unpredictable nature of the Vermont wilderness. The weather on Glastonbury Mountain can change in minutes, creating disorienting whiteout conditions or flash floods. It's possible the victims simply got lost, succumbed to the elements, and their remains were scattered by animals or buried by landslides over time. This could explain some of the disappearances, like that of Frida Langer or Midi Rivers. But it doesn't account for the abruptly ending footprints or the fact that so many experienced woodsmen involved in the searches found absolutely nothing. It feels too simple for a puzzle with so many bizarre and contradictory pieces. This is where the paranormal theories take hold, fueled by the high strangeness of the events. Many paranormal investigators, including us, believe that the Bennington Triangle could be the site of an interdimensional portal or a window area. This theory suggests that the disappearances are not abductions in the traditional sense, but rather instances of people accidentally stepping through a tear in the fabric of reality, finding themselves in another place, another time, or another dimension entirely. This would explain the complete lack of bodies or evidence and the sudden termination of their tracks. They didn't go left or right, they simply went elsewhere. The oldest and perhaps most resonant theory is rooted in Native American folklore. Long before it was called the Bennington Triangle, local Algonquin tribes considered Glastonbury Mountain to be cursed ground. They used it for burial purposes, but would never settle there, believing it to be a place where the four winds met in a chaotic and dangerous vortex. They spoke of a man-eating stone that was said to swallow anyone who stepped on it. These ancient warnings describe a land with a volatile, malevolent energy. Whether you believe in curses, portals, or serial killers, the legends passed down by those who first knew this land speak of a power there that is not to be trifled with, a power that for 5 years seemed to awaken and feed. Today, the Bennington Triangle remains a place of deep mystery. The 5-year period of intense, unexplained disappearances ended as abruptly as it began. After Frida Langer's body was found in 1951, the strange occurrences seemed to cease, and the mountain returned to its slumber. But the questions never went away. Why did it all happen within such a specific time frame and geographic area? Why these 5 people? Were there others before and after whose stories have been lost to time? The lack of answers is what keeps the legend alive. A cold case that has seeped into the very soil of Vermont. It's a story without an ending, a wound that has never healed. The legacy of the Bennington Triangle is one of fear and caution. The stories are passed down through generations, whispered around campfires and shared in hushed tones in local diners. They serve as a stark reminder that there are still vast, wild places on our map where the unknown holds sway. The abandoned town of Glastonbury is now nothing more than a ghost town in the truest sense, its foundations overgrown and its history forever linked to the people who vanished there. The forest has reclaimed the land, but it cannot erase the memory of the terror that once gripped this community. The silence that now hangs over the mountain is not a peaceful one, it is heavy with secrets. For paranormal investigators, the Bennington Triangle is a holy grail of high strangeness. It represents a potent mix of history, folklore, and documented inexplicable events. It's a place where the veil feels thin, where the energy is raw and palpable. When you walk the long trail today, it's impossible not to feel the weight of the past. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, every gust of wind that moans through the trees seems to carry an echo of the mystery. You can't help but look over your shoulder to feel a prickling sensation on the back of your neck, to wonder if you are truly alone. Are the spirits of the lost still wandering these woods, or is the force that took them still waiting? The enduring power of the Bennington Triangle mystery lies in its assault on our understanding of the world. It defies easy explanation. It forces us to confront the possibility that there are forces at play beyond our comprehension. Forces ancient, powerful, and indifferent to human life. The stories of Midi Rivers, Paula Weldon, James Tedford, Paul Jepson, and Frida Langer are not just ghost stories. They are documented historical events that have never been solved. They are a chilling testament to the fact that even in our modern world, there are still shadows dark enough to swallow a person whole, leaving behind nothing but an echo and a profound, unsettled silence.